The champagne flute trembled in my grip, condensation slipping between my fingers like the composure I was desperately clinging to. The gallery hummed with polite laughter and the clink of expensive crystal, but all I could hear was the blood rushing in my ears as I spotted him across the room. David. My ex-fiancé stood near the Monet replica, his hand resting possessively on the lower back of a blonde woman draped in Chanel. 3 years had passed since he'd shattered our engagement, since he'd told me I was too ordinary for the life he wanted to build. 3 years since I'd packed my belongings from our shared apartment while he watched, arms crossed, not offering to help carry a single box. The gallery's air conditioning raised goosebumps on my arms, but I couldn't tell if it was the chill or the anxiety crawling up my spine. I'd come tonight because my best friend Maya insisted, "You need to get out, Emma. You can't hide forever." The irony wasn't lost on me. I wasn't hiding. I was surviving. I turned toward the exit, my black dress, a simple Calvin Klein I'd found at a consignment shop, suddenly feeling threadbare compared to the couture surrounding me. The scent of expensive perfume mixed with wine made my stomach turn. Emma? Emma Morrison? I froze. My maiden name. He didn't know. Of course he didn't know. Forcing my features into something resembling calm, I turned. David approached with that familiar swagger, the blonde trailing behind him like an accessory. His cologne, still that same Tom Ford he'd always worn, hit me like a physical assault, bringing back memories of arguments and ultimatums. "I thought that was you," he said, his eyes scanning me from head to toe in a way that made my skin crawl, not with desire, with appraisal, like I was livestock at auction. "Wow, you look exactly the same." The way he said it, I knew he didn't mean it as a compliment. "David." I managed to keep my voice steady, proud of myself for that small victory. "This is Vanessa." He gestured to the blonde, who extended a hand weighted down by what had to be a 3-carat diamond. "My fiancé. We're getting married in the Hamptons next month." "Congratulations," I murmured, the word tasting like ash. "And you?" Vanessa's voice dripped with practiced sweetness, the kind that barely concealed the knife underneath. "Are you here with someone?" Before I could formulate a response, David laughed, that same condescending chuckle I remembered from arguments about my career choices, my clothes, my friends. "No husband yet, Emma. Still waiting for your prince to come?" The words hit their target. I felt my cheeks burn, my throat tightening. Around us, conversations continued, oblivious to my humiliation. The gallery's white walls suddenly felt like they were closing in, the abstract art blurring into meaningless shapes. "Actually," I started, but David was already talking over me. "You know, I always wondered if you'd end up alone," he continued, and I could see Vanessa trying to hide a smirk. "You were always so picky, so unwilling to compromise. I tried to help you see what you needed to change, but..." He shrugged, as if my entire existence was a failed project he'd abandoned. Something inside me snapped. Maybe it was the way he stood there, so smug, so certain of my failure. Maybe it was the 3 years of rebuilding myself, of learning to stand on my own, only to have him try to knock me down again with a few casual words. "I'm married," I said quietly. The words hung in the air between us. David's expression shifted from amusement to confusion to something that looked almost like concern. "You're... what?" "Married." I lifted my left hand, where the platinum band caught the gallery lights. It was simple, elegant, and had cost more than David made in 6 months, though he didn't need to know that. 6 months ago. Vanessa's perfectly microbladed eyebrows rose. "Oh? To whom?" The question felt like a trap. I opened my mouth, unsure what to say. My husband and I had agreed to keep things private. His world and mine existed in separate spheres, and we'd both preferred it that way. The arrangement was simple. I got security. He got... well, I was still trying to understand what he got out of it. "That's private," I said, the words sounding defensive even to my own ears. David's laugh was sharper now, edged with something ugly. "Private? Or imaginary?" He leaned closer, and I caught a whiff of whiskey beneath the cologne. "Come on, Emma. If you were really married, you'd be here with him?" You always were a terrible liar. My face burned hotter. Around us, I noticed a few heads turning, drawn by the rising tension. The gallery's polished concrete floors suddenly felt unsteady beneath my heels. I don't have to prove anything to you, I managed, but my voice wavered. Still the same, Emma, David said, shaking his head with mock pity. Making up stories, living in fantasy. I dodged a bullet, didn't I, V? Vanessa giggled, the sound grating against my nerves like nails on a chalkboard. I needed to leave. Now. Before I broke down in front of them, before I gave David the satisfaction of seeing me cry, I mumbled something about needing air and turned toward the exit, my vision blurring. The gallery door felt miles away. My heels clicked against the floor, cheap shoes, probably noticeable to everyone here. Everything about me suddenly felt exposed, inadequate. The walls displayed art worth thousands, surrounded by people dripping in wealth, and I was the girl in the consignment dress with the imaginary husband. I pushed through the glass doors into the Manhattan night. The September air hit my face, cooler now, carrying the scent of rain and exhaust fumes. The street was busy, taxis honking, people streaming past, the city indifferent to my private humiliation. My phone buzzed in my clutch. I pulled it out with shaking hands. Where are you? 3 words. No greeting, no pleasantries. That was him. Direct, economical with words, always in control. My fingers hovered over the screen. Dante didn't do gallery openings. He didn't do public anything if he could avoid it. Our marriage was a business arrangement, a solution to problems we'd both faced. I'd needed security after my landlord had sold my building and I'd been evicted. He'd needed... I still wasn't entirely sure what he'd needed, but his lawyer had presented the offer with clinical precision. A marriage of convenience, the lawyer had said. Separate lives, separate spaces. You'll be protected, provided for, and after 2 years, you can walk away with enough money to start over properly. It had seemed insane. It still seemed insane, but I'd been desperate. And Dante had been persuasive, not in the way David had been persuasive, with charm and promises. No. Dante's persuasion came from the way he'd looked at me during our one meeting before the courthouse wedding, like he saw something in me that I couldn't see in myself. Emma. Another text. I could almost hear the edge in it, that particular tone that meant he expected a response. My thumbs moved across the screen. At a gallery in Chelsea. Leaving now. The reply came instantly. Stay there. 5 minutes. I didn't bother arguing. When Dante said 5 minutes, he meant 5 minutes. I'd learned that quickly enough. I leaned against the gallery's exterior wall, trying to steady my breathing. The brick was rough against my back, grounding me. Above, the city sky glowed orange with light pollution, stars invisible. A group of 20-somethings passed, laughing, and I felt impossibly old despite being only 28. My phone buzzed again. Not a text this time. A call. The screen showed D with no last name, no photo. Everything about my husband was carefully anonymous. Hello? Who upset you? His voice was low, controlled. But I'd learned to hear the undertones. There was something sharp beneath the calm, like ice over deep water. How did you... Your location pinged as stationary for 12 minutes, then you moved abruptly to exit. Your texts were delayed. Either something's wrong, or you're in danger. A pause. Which is it? This was Dante. Everything was data, patterns, potential threats. I'd found his security measures excessive at first. The tracking app he'd insisted I install. The driver who appeared whenever I went more than a few blocks from the apartment. The way he always seemed to know where I was. Maya had called it controlling. I'd called it the price of the arrangement. Now, standing in the cooling night with my ex-boyfriend's mockery still ringing in my ears, I wasn't sure what to call it. It's nothing, I said. Just ran into someone I used to know, Emma. The way he said my name wasn't a question. It was a command disguised as one. Tell me the truth. My ex-fiancé. We talked. It was fine. You're lying. The certainty in his voice made my stomach drop. How did he know? We'd lived separate lives for 6 months, seeing each other maybe twice a month for the mandatory check-ins his lawyer had insisted upon. Dante's penthouse and my modest apartment existed in different universes. He conducted his business, whatever it actually was, behind closed doors and encrypted phones, while I worked my administrative job at a nonprofit and tried to build something resembling a normal life. But he always knew. Always. He didn't know we were married, I admitted finally. He thought I was lying when I told him. He mocked me. Silence on the other end, not empty silence. I could hear something in the background, voices, then a door closing. When Dante spoke again, his voice had dropped even lower, and something in my chest tightened. What's his name? Dante, it's not. His name, Emma. A black SUV turned onto the street, moving with purpose. My heart began to pound. No, it couldn't be. He was supposed to be at a meeting downtown, something important that he'd mentioned in passing during our last awkward dinner. The vehicle pulled up directly in front of me, and the back door opened. Dante stepped out. I'd forgotten how he looked in person. The photos I'd seen during our arrangement negotiations hadn't captured the reality of him. Tall, built like someone who knew how to handle himself, wearing a Tom Ford suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent used to be. But it was his face that always caught me off guard. Sharp features, dark eyes that missed nothing, and that mouth that rarely smiled but somehow conveyed volumes. 2 men emerged from the front seats, positioned on either side. Security. Always security. Dante's gaze locked onto mine, and I stopped breathing. He moved toward me with fluid grace, each step deliberate, the scent of his cologne, something dark and expensive, cedar and amber, reached me before he did. You're shaking, he observed, his hand reaching up to cup my elbow. His touch was warm, steady, and completely unexpected. We didn't touch. That wasn't part of the arrangement. I'm fine, I whispered, but my traitorous body leaned slightly into his stability. His eyes narrowed, then moved past me to the gallery entrance. He's in there. Dante, please. It's not worth... But he was already moving, his hand still on my elbow, guiding me. No, pulling me. Back toward the entrance. The security detail flanked us, and suddenly we weren't just 3 people entering a gallery. We were something else entirely. The moment we stepped inside, conversations faltered, heads turned. The air itself seemed to shift, recognizing something I'd been too naive to fully understand about the man I'd married in a courthouse 6 months ago. Dante's gaze swept the room with predatory precision, and I watched the color drain from the gallery owner's face as she started toward us, her expression shifting from confusion to recognition to something that looked like fear. Mr. Moretti, she stammered. We weren't expecting... My wife was here, Dante said quietly, each word precise. Someone made her uncomfortable. I'd like to know who. My wife. He'd never called me that before, not once in 6 months. The gallery had gone completely silent, and there, near the Monet, I saw David's face turn ashen as he finally, understood. The gallery's silence pressed against my eardrums like water pressure, suffocating and absolute. Every eye in the room had shifted from the art to us, to Dante's hand still firm on my elbow, to the 2 men flanking us with the stillness of coiled violence, to the way the space itself seemed to rearrange around his presence. I'd never seen him like this. In our brief clinical meetings, Dante had been controlled, almost cold. Professional. He'd discussed the terms of our arrangement with the detachment of someone negotiating a business contract, which, I supposed, was exactly what it had been. But this was different. There was something burning beneath his composed exterior, something that made my pulse quicken for reasons I didn't want to examine. Emma? His voice dropped lower, meant only for me, though I suspected everyone in the room was straining to hear. Point him out. My throat constricted. This was spiraling into something I hadn't intended, something I couldn't control. David stood frozen near the contemporary section, Vanessa clutching his arm with white-knuckled fingers. Even from across the room, I could see the recognition dawning on his face. Not of Dante personally, but of what Dante represented: power, danger. Money that didn't need to announce itself because everyone already knew. The one in the navy suit, I heard myself whisper. But Dante, really, it's not... He was already moving. The crowd parted without anyone consciously deciding to move. It simply happened. Like a natural law. People stepping back, creating a path. their faces reflecting varying degrees of curiosity and alarm. The gallery owner hovered nearby, wringing her hands, clearly torn between protecting her guests and not offending whatever force Dante represented. I followed because his hand never left my elbow, and because some part of me, the part that had spent 3 years rebuilding myself after David's rejection, wanted to see this. Wanted him to understand that I hadn't been lying, that I wasn't the pathetic figure he'd painted me as. We stopped 3 feet from David and Vanessa. Up close, I could see the sweat beading on David's forehead despite the gallery's aggressive air conditioning. His cologne seemed cheaper now, cloying. Vanessa had gone pale beneath her spray tan, her engagement ring suddenly looking gaudy rather than impressive. Dante released my elbow, and I immediately felt the absence of his warmth. He stood slightly in front of me, not blocking me, but positioned in a way that was unmistakably protective. One of his security detail had moved to the gallery entrance. The other stood 6 feet back, eyes scanning the room with mechanical precision. "You spoke to my wife," Dante's voice carried despite its quietness, each word articulated with the clarity of someone accustomed to being obeyed. Not a question, a statement of fact. David's mouth opened and closed. I'd never seen him speechless before. During our relationship, he'd always had an answer, always been ready with a comment or criticism. Now he looked like a fish drowning in air. We were just catching up, David finally managed, his voice cracking slightly. Old friends. Friends. Dante repeated the word like he was tasting something rotten. His head tilted slightly, a gesture I'd seen once before when his lawyer had tried to add a clause to our agreement that Dante hadn't approved. It had been the only time I'd seen the lawyer look genuinely nervous. "Is that what you call questioning the legitimacy of her marriage? Mocking her in public?" The blood drained further from David's face. "I didn't mean... I wasn't... You told her she was lying." Dante took 1 step closer, just one. But something in that movement made David stumble backward, nearly knocking into a sculpture. "You called her a liar in front of your fiancé, in front of strangers. You humiliated her." "It was a misunderstanding," Vanessa interjected, her voice shrill. "David didn't know she was actually..." Dante's gaze shifted to her, and she stopped mid-sentence. I'd never understood the phrase, "if looks could kill," until that moment. His eyes were dark, impossibly dark, and completely devoid of warmth. Not angry. Anger would have been almost human. This was something else, something that made my own breath catch. "You laughed," he said to Vanessa, and I realized with a jolt that he'd somehow known, somehow pieced together the entire encounter from whatever information he'd extracted from my evasive answers. "You found her pain amusing." Vanessa's hand flew to her throat, fingers clutching at her pearl necklace. No, I wasn't..." "Dante." I found my voice, though it came out smaller than I'd intended. "Can we just go? Please?" He didn't look at me, but his hand found mine, fingers interlacing with a possessiveness that sent electricity up my arm. We'd never held hands, never touched beyond the clinical brushing of shoulders during our wedding ceremony, witnessed only by his lawyer and a bored court clerk. "In a moment," he said, still watching David with that unnerving stillness. "I want to make sure we're all clear on a few things." The gallery owner had disappeared, I noticed. Several guests had quietly filtered toward the exit, but many remained, drawn by the spectacle, by the raw display of power that had nothing to do with raised voices or physical threats. Dante's power was in his stillness, in the way everyone in the room understood instinctively that he could end them with a word, a gesture, a simple nod to the men who flanked him. "Emma is my wife," Dante continued, his thumb now tracing absent circles on the back of my hand. The gesture felt automatic, like he wasn't even aware he was doing it. That's not a fantasy, not a story. It's a legal fact, and more importantly, it's a reality that you will respect. "Of course," David stammered. "Absolutely. I apologize. You didn't think," Dante finished for him. "You didn't think that the woman you discarded might have value beyond what you could see. You didn't think she might be worth something to someone who actually knows quality when he sees it." My chest tightened. The words were possessive, almost objectifying, but they were also a defense of me. For me. No one had defended me in years. Not since my parents had passed. Not since I'd found myself truly alone in the world. I'd learned to defend myself, to stand on my own, because there had been no other choice. But this was different. "We'll be leaving now," Dante said, already turning, already guiding me toward the exit with that same firm hand. "If I hear that you've spoken about my wife again, to anyone, in any context, I'll take it as a personal insult. Do you understand what that means?" He didn't wait for an answer. We were already moving, the security detail falling into formation around us. The remaining guests parted like the Red Sea, and I caught glimpses of their faces, awed, frightened, fascinated. Someone lifted a phone, but one of Dante's men was there instantly. A quiet word making the device disappear back into a purse. The September night air hit my face again, but this time it felt different. Less like escape, and more like stepping from one world into another. The black SUV waited at the curb, engine running, rear door already open. Dante guided me inside first, his hand on the small of my back, another touch that shouldn't have meant anything but somehow did. The leather interior smelled new, expensive. Soft lighting illuminated the cabin, revealing a space that was more mobile office than vehicle. Screens, phones, a laptop secured to a custom mount. He slid in beside me, and the door closed with a heavy, final sound. Bulletproof, I realized. The glass was thicker than normal, the door heavier. This wasn't just luxury, it was protection. The vehicle pulled away from the curb with smooth precision, and only then did Dante release a breath I hadn't realized he'd been holding. "Are you hurt?" he asked, turning to face me fully for the first time. The question caught me off guard. "What?" "No, he just said some things. Things that made you shake, things that made you lie to me when I asked what was wrong." His hand came up, fingers catching my chin with gentle but insistent pressure, turning my face toward his. "Look at me." I did. In the SUV's dim lighting, his features were sharper, more defined. There were scars I'd never noticed before. A thin line along his jaw, another above his left eyebrow. His eyes searched mine with an intensity that made me want to look away, but his grip prevented it. "I'm fine," I whispered. "Really? You didn't have to do all that." "Yes," he said quietly, "I did." "Why?" The question escaped before I could stop it. "We barely know each other. This is just an arrangement. You said it yourself. 2 years, separate lives. Then we're done." Something flickered across his face, too quick to identify. His thumb brushed along my jawline, the touch feather light but impossible to ignore. "That was the agreement," he acknowledged. "But agreements can be renegotiated." My heart hammered against my ribs. "What does that mean?" Instead of answering, he released my chin and reached for one of the phones mounted near his seat. His fingers moved across the screen with practiced efficiency, pulling up something I couldn't see. "David Morrison," he read aloud, his voice taking on that clinical quality again. "Works in commercial real estate, mid-level position at Meridian Properties. Engaged to Vanessa Chen, daughter of the Chen family. Old money, slowly disappearing money. He's leveraged to his eyeballs, trying to maintain an image he can't afford." I stared at him. "How do you... You've had him for less than 20 minutes. 18 minutes, Dante corrected, still scrolling. "His company is 3 months behind on payments to one of my associates. Interesting that he's planning a Hampton wedding when he can't even pay his commercial debts. Your associates." I repeated the word carefully, tasting the implications. Dante's eyes lifted from the screen, meeting mine. In that moment, I saw the truth I'd been carefully avoiding for 6 months. The separate lives, the security detail, the way people responded to his name. It all crystallized into understanding. "What exactly is it that you do?" I asked, though part of me didn't want the answer. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "I solve problems." "That's not an answer. It's the only answer you need." He set the phone down, his full attention returning to me. "What you do need to know is this. You're mine to protect now. That's not conditional on our arrangement or its timeline. Anyone who hurts you answers to me." The possessiveness in his words should have frightened me. should have sent me scrambling for the door. Arrangement or no arrangement. Instead, something warm unfurled in my chest, dangerous and unwanted. "I can protect myself," I said, but the words lacked conviction. "I know you can." His hand found mine again, fingers threading through with that same easy possession. "You've been doing it for years, but you don't have to anymore." The SUV turned onto a street I didn't recognize, heading away from my modest apartment in Brooklyn. I should have asked where we were going. Should have protested. Instead, I sat there with my hand in his, feeling the calluses on his palms, the strength in his grip, and wondered when exactly the arrangement had started feeling like something else. "Where are we going?" I finally managed. "My place." He said it casually, like it was obvious. "You're not going back to that apartment tonight." "Dante, I have work tomorrow. I need my things already handled." "Someone's packing what you need and will deliver it within the hour." His thumb resumed those maddening circles on my skin. "You'll stay with me tonight. We need to talk." "About what?" He turned to look at me fully, and the intensity in his gaze made my breath catch. "About what happens next." The penthouse occupied the entire 42nd floor of a building I'd only ever seen from street level. The kind of address that showed up in architectural magazines and celebrity gossip columns. The private elevator opened directly into the foyer, and I stepped out onto marble floors that gleamed like still water, my cheap heels clicking too loudly in the silence. Floor-to-ceiling windows dominated the far wall, offering a view of Manhattan that seemed impossible. The city spread out like a glittering circuit board, alive and infinite. The furniture was minimal but clearly expensive. Sleek leather, dark wood, everything positioned with the precision of someone who valued both aesthetics and function. "I'll have Marcus bring up your things," Dante said, shrugging out of his suit jacket. Beneath it, his white shirt was crisp, tailored perfectly to his frame. He draped the jacket over the back of a chair with casual grace, then moved to a bar cart I hadn't noticed. "Whiskey?" "I don't drink whiskey." My voice sounded small in the vast space. "Wine, then. Red or white?" "Red." I clutched my clutch purse like a lifeline, suddenly hyper-aware that I'd never been here before. In 6 months of marriage, I'd never seen where my husband actually lived. Our meetings had always been neutral territory. Restaurants, his lawyer's office, once a park bench when he'd claimed he needed air. He poured with the same efficiency he brought to everything, returning with 2 glasses. The wine was deep crimson, probably costing more per bottle than I made in a week. I took it with trembling fingers, grateful for something to hold. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the leather sofa, not a command, but close enough. I perched on the edge, my dress suddenly feeling even more inadequate in these surroundings. Everything here whispered wealth in a way that didn't need to shout. The art on the walls wasn't prints. They were originals. The rug beneath my feet felt hand-woven, ancient. Even the air smelled expensive, like leather and wood polish and something indefinably masculine. Dante sat beside me, closer than necessary, his thigh nearly touching mine. He'd rolled up his shirt sleeves, revealing forearms corded with muscle and marked with more scars. Thin white lines that told stories I'd never heard. "You're nervous," he observed, swirling his whiskey. "You had someone pack my things without asking me." I took a sip of wine for courage. It tasted like dark fruit and oak, smooth and complex. "You brought me here without asking. What you did at the gallery needed to be done." "No, it didn't." The words came out sharper than intended. "I could have handled David myself. I've been handling things myself for years." "I know." He set his glass down on the coffee table with deliberate care. "But you shouldn't have to. That's not how this works." I gestured between us with my wine glass, the liquid sloshing dangerously close to the rim. "We have an arrangement. Separate lives. You said it yourself. This is temporary." "Emma." The way he said my name made me stop mid-rant. His hand came up, fingers catching a strand of hair that had escaped my updo, tucking it behind my ear with unexpected gentleness. "Look at me." I did, and immediately regretted it. Up close, his eyes weren't just dark. They were layered, complex, holding depths I'd been carefully avoiding exploring. There was danger there, yes, but also something else. something that made my stomach flip. The arrangement was a lie, he said quietly. The words hung between us, heavy with implication. My heart stuttered. What? Not entirely a lie, he amended, his fingers still playing with that strand of hair, now tracing down to my jaw. The terms were real. The timeline was real. But the reason... He paused. And for the first time since I'd met him, Dante looked uncertain. Vulnerable, even. I didn't marry you because I needed a convenient wife for business purposes. The wineglass trembled in my grip. I set it down before I dropped it. Then why? His thumb brushed across my lower lip, and I stopped breathing entirely. Because 6 months ago I walked into that hospital where you volunteer on Saturdays. I was there visiting one of my men who'd been injured. And I saw you in the children's ward, reading to a little girl with leukemia. You were wearing scrubs that were too big, your hair in a ponytail, no makeup. And you were crying while you read because the story was sad, but you kept reading anyway, kept smiling for her. I remembered that day. Remembered little Sophia who'd passed away 2 weeks later. Remembered reading The Velveteen Rabbit and barely making it through the ending. I made inquiries, Dante continued, his voice dropping lower. Found out you'd been evicted, that you were struggling, that your ex-fiancé had left you with nothing, and I thought... He stopped, something like anger flashing across his features. I thought, here's someone good, someone real, someone who deserves better than what this city gives people like her. So, you decided to save me? The words came out bitter, like some kind of charity case? No. His hand cupped my face now, forcing me to maintain eye contact. I decided to keep you. There's a difference. The possessiveness in those words should have terrified me. Instead, heat flooded through my body, pooling low in my stomach. Dante, I've been patient, he continued, and there was something almost desperate beneath his controlled exterior now. 6 months of separate lives, of pretending this was just business. 6 months of knowing you were sleeping in that apartment with locks that wouldn't keep out a determined teenager, in a neighborhood where I had to assign security just to make sure you made it home safely. You assigned security? I pulled back slightly, processing this new information. I thought those were just, I don't know, regular people. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. The man who works at the bodega on your corner? Mine. The woman who started jogging your route 3 months ago? Mine. The night doorman at the building across from yours? Also mine. I should have been angry, should have felt violated, surveilled. Instead, I felt something else entirely, the weight of being seen, truly seen, perhaps for the first time in years. Why tell me this now? I whispered. Because of what happened tonight, because I saw how he made you feel. Small, worthless. Like you were lying about something that's more real than any part of my life has been in years. His forehead pressed against mine, his breath warm against my lips. Because I'm done pretending this is temporary. I'm done with separate lives. What are you saying? I'm saying the arrangement changes. You move in here, with me. No more separate apartments. No more casual dinners once a week where we pretend to be strangers who happen to be legally bound. His hand slid down to my neck, thumb pressing against my racing pulse. I'm saying I want a real marriage, Emma. With you. The words should have sent me running. This was insane. We barely knew each other. Our marriage had been a transaction, a solution to problems that had seemed insurmountable 6 months ago. But as I sat there with his hand on my throat, feeling the evidence of my desire betrayed by my own heartbeat, I couldn't remember why any of that mattered. You don't know me, I managed weakly. I know you volunteer at that hospital every Saturday. I know you eat Thai food when you're sad and Italian when you're celebrating. I know you're afraid of heights, but you took an apartment on the 6th floor anyway because the rent was affordable. I know you listen to jazz when you paint. Yes, I know about the paintings. The ones you hide in your closet because David told you they were amateurish. His voice had dropped to barely above a whisper. Intimate and intense. I know you're stronger than you think you are and braver, and that you deserve someone who sees that. Tears pricked at my eyes. No one had ever. David certainly never. I'm not good, Dante continued. And now there was something raw in his voice, something that sounded like confession. I'm not the kind of man you probably imagined yourself with. I've done things, Emma. Things that would make you run if you knew the details. But I swear to you, I swear on everything I have, I will never hurt you. I will never make you feel less than you are. And I will burn down the world before I let anyone else hurt you again. I struggled for words. That's insane. You barely know me, and what you're describing sounds like obsession? He pulled back just enough to meet my eyes, and what I saw there stole my breath. Yes, that's exactly what it is. The honesty of it hit me like a physical blow. No games, no pretense. Just raw truth laid bare between us. I should be scared, I whispered. Are you? I searched my feelings, expecting to find fear, finding instead something that felt dangerously close to relief. To want. To the terrifying possibility of being cherished by someone who actually saw me. No, I admitted, I'm not. Something in his expression shifted. Triumph mixed with tenderness, mixed with that ever-present hunger. Then say yes. To what, exactly? To staying. To letting me court you properly, the way I should have from the beginning. To giving this, us, a real chance. His hand tightened slightly on my throat, possessive but careful. To being mine in more than just name. The word mine sent a shiver down my spine. 6 months ago, I would have bristled at the possessiveness, at the implication of ownership. David had tried to own me, to mold me into something he found acceptable. This felt different. Dante wasn't trying to change me. He was trying to claim me, exactly as I was. What about the 2-year timeline? I asked, stalling, needing to understand the full scope of what he was offering. Fuck the timeline. The profanity sounded almost shocking coming from him. I want forever, Emma. I want to wake up next to you. I want to come home to you. I want every man who looks at you to know exactly who you belong to. I don't belong to anyone, I said automatically, but the protest sounded weak even to my own ears. Don't you? His thumb traced my lower lip again, and I couldn't suppress the small gasp that escaped. Your body's already saying yes, even if your mind is still catching up. He was right. My pulse raced where his hand rested against my throat. My skin felt electric everywhere he touched. My breath came shallow and quick, and the warmth that had been pooling in my stomach had spread throughout my entire body. I need time, I whispered, even as I leaned into his touch. This is all. It's too much, too fast. You have tonight, he said, and though the words were uncompromising, his touch remained gentle. Sleep here. Let me show you what this could be, and tomorrow you can decide. And if I say no? Pain flashed across his features, quickly masked. Then I honor our original agreement. 2 years, separate lives, and then you're free to go. His hand dropped from my throat, leaving me feeling oddly bereft. But I don't think you will say no. The confidence in his voice sparked something in me. Irritation, maybe, or the need to prove him wrong. You're very sure of yourself. I'm sure of what I saw tonight, the way you looked at me when I defended you. The way you're looking at me right now. He leaned back slightly, giving me space but keeping his eyes locked on mine. You're not in love with me, not yet. But you want to be. You want to let go, to trust someone again, and I'm offering you that chance. He was right, and I hated how right he was, hated and craved it in equal measure. A knock at the door interrupted the charged silence. Dante rose fluidly, pressing a button on a panel near the entrance. A voice crackled through. Marcus with Ms. Emma's things, sir. Bring them to the guest room, Dante instructed, then turned back to me. You'll sleep there tonight. Separate spaces like you need, but Emma? He moved back toward me, leaning down until his lips nearly brushed my ear. My room is right next door. All you have to do is knock. Then he was gone, moving toward the entrance to deal with Marcus and my hastily packed belongings, leaving me trembling on his expensive sofa with a half-empty wine glass and a decision that felt far bigger than it should. Through the windows, Manhattan glittered with 1,000 possibilities, each light a life, a choice, a path not taken. And I sat there, caught between the woman I'd been, practical, cautious, alone, and the woman I might become, the woman who belonged to Dante Moretti. I didn't sleep. The guest room was obscenely beautiful, all soft grays and cream, with a bed large enough for 4 people and sheets that felt like liquid silk against my skin. Someone had unpacked my clothes into the walk-in closet, my toiletries arranged with precision in the ensuite bathroom. Even my battered copy of Jane Eyre sat on the nightstand, a bookmark still holding my place. The attention to detail should have comforted me. Instead, it emphasized how thoroughly Dante had infiltrated my life without me fully realizing it. He knew which book I was reading, knew which pajamas I preferred, probably knew 1,000 other small things I'd never consciously shared. I'd changed into my worn NYU t-shirt and sleep shorts, washed my face, gone through all the familiar rituals of bedtime. Then I'd lain in that enormous bed, staring at the ceiling, hyper-aware that Dante was just beyond the wall to my right. All you have to do is knock. His words echoed in my mind, tangling with everything else he'd said, the admission that our marriage had never been the simple arrangement I'd believed. The possessiveness in his touch, the raw honesty when he'd called it obsession. I should have been planning my escape. Should have been terrified of a man who'd orchestrated our entire relationship, who'd watched me for weeks before approaching, who commanded enough power to make David, arrogant, self-assured David, look ready to wet himself. Instead, I kept remembering the way Dante's hand had felt on my throat, the hunger in his eyes when he'd said he wanted forever, the certainty in his voice when he'd promised to protect me. Around 3 a.m, I gave up on sleep and padded to the windows. The city stretched below, still alive despite the hour. Headlights traced paths through the grid of streets. Windows glowed in other buildings, other lives unfolding in parallel. I pressed my forehead against the cool glass, trying to organize the chaos in my head. 6 months ago, I'd been desperate. Homeless, essentially, with savings that wouldn't last 2 months. The nonprofit where I worked paid barely enough to survive on, and finding a new apartment in New York with my income had seemed impossible. Then Dante's lawyer had appeared with an offer that sounded like fiction. Marry Dante Moretti. Live separately but comfortably for 2 years. Walk away with enough money to start over properly. No intimacy required, no public appearances, just a legal arrangement that solved both their problems. I'd never asked what problem it solved for Dante. Now I knew it had never been about solving a problem. It had been about keeping me close while maintaining the illusion of distance. Can't sleep? I spun around, heart hammering. Dante stood in the doorway, backlit by the hallway's soft lighting. He'd changed too. Black pajama pants slung low on his hips, no shirt. I'd never seen him without the armor of his suits. And the reality of him struck me like a physical blow. He wasn't just fit. He was built like violence wrapped in control. Broad shoulders, defined chest and abdomen, arms that spoke of regular, serious training. But it was the scars that caught my attention. They weren't decorative or accidental. They were survival. A puckered circle on his left shoulder that could only be a bullet wound. Long, thin lines across his ribs that looked like knife work. A burn mark on his right side, raised and angry, even though it had clearly healed years ago. I knocked, he said quietly, moving into the room. You didn't answer. I didn't hear. I stopped, realizing what he'd said. You knocked on my door? I told you my room was next door. He moved to stand beside me at the window, his shoulder nearly brushing mine. I heard you moving around, wanted to make sure you were all right. The consideration in those words felt incongruous with everything else about him. The scars, the power, the casual way he'd dismantled David's bravado with barely a word. But maybe that was the point. Maybe Dante was full of contradictions I'd been too blind to see. I can't stop thinking, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. About everything. Tonight. What you said. What you want from me. I turned to face him, needing to see his expression. You talked about obsession like it's normal, like it's something I should want. His jaw tightened. Would you prefer I lied? Told you this is something rational and reasonable? I'd prefer to understand it. My hands clenched at my sides. You saw me reading to a sick child and decided to, what? Rearrange your entire life to keep me? Yes. No hesitation, no softening of the truth. That's insane. Probably. He turned to face me fully, and the intensity in his gaze made my breath catch. But I've spent my entire adult life in a world where everything is calculated, where trust is currency and vulnerability is weakness, where the only thing that matters is power and the will to use it. His hand came up, fingers tracing the line of my jaw with devastating gentleness. And then I saw you crying over a children's book, giving your time to kids you don't know, being soft in a world that punishes softness. And I thought, I want that. I want to protect that. I want to keep something good in my life before this world destroys it. I'm not some fragile thing that needs protecting, I protested, but my voice wavered. No, he agreed, you're not. You survived your parents' death. You survived David's abandonment. You survived being alone in a city that eats people alive, and you did it with your kindness intact. That's not fragile, Emma. That's steel wrapped in silk. No one had ever described me that way. David had called me weak, too emotional, too soft for the real world, had said I needed to toughen up, be more practical, less naive. Dante was saying the opposite, that my softness was strength, not weakness. What if I can't be what you want? I whispered, voicing my deepest fear. What if you've built up some fantasy in your head and the reality disappoints you? His thumb brushed across my lower lip, the touch sending electricity down my spine. You could never disappoint me. You don't know that. I do. He stepped closer, and I could feel the heat radiating from his bare skin, because I'm not asking you to be anything other than exactly what you are. I don't want to change you, Emma. I want to worship you. The word hung between us, weighted with promise and danger. My heart hammered so hard I was sure he could hear it. This is crazy, I breathed. But I didn't move away. Yes, he agreed, his other hand coming up to frame my face. But sometimes the crazy choice is the right one. I should have argued, should have maintained distance, insisted on thinking clearly without his hands on me, without his body so close I could count his heartbeats. But I was tired of being practical, tired of being careful, tired of protecting myself from potential hurt by never letting anyone close enough to inflict it. One condition, I heard myself say. His eyes darkened with something that looked like hope. Name it. Honesty. Complete honesty. I placed my hands on his chest, feeling the steady thrum of his heart beneath my palms. I know you're not going to tell me everything about your business. I'm not stupid, Dante. I know what you are, or at least what you probably are. But about us, about this. No more secrets. No more watching me without my knowledge. No more arranged coincidences. Something like pain flickered across his features. The security stays. That's non-negotiable. I'm not asking you to remove it. I'm asking you to tell me about it. Let me know who's watching, where, why. My fingers curled against his skin. And if something dangerous is happening, something that might affect me, I want to know. Don't try to shield me from reality. He was quiet for a long moment, his hands still framing my face, his eyes searching mine. Finally, he nodded. All right. Honesty about us, about what affects you. His thumb traced my cheekbone. But Emma, understand? Some things I can't tell you, not because I want to keep secrets, but because knowing them would put you in danger. The less you know about certain aspects of my work, the safer you are. Then tell me what you can, I countered. Just don't lie to me. If you can't answer something, say that, but don't make up comfortable fictions. I can live with that. His forehead pressed against mine, and I felt the tension leave his body. Anything else? I want to keep volunteering at the hospital. The thought of giving up my Saturdays with the children felt like losing a part of myself. And my job at the nonprofit. I know you could probably support me without me working, but I need purpose, he finished. Identity beyond being my wife. I understand. His hands slid down to my shoulders, thumbs tracing my collarbones through the thin fabric of my t-shirt. Keep both. Though I'd like to assign additional security for the hospital visits. That seems excessive. Humor me. His lips brushed against my forehead. Feather light. You're agreeing to be with me, Emma. Really with me. That means accepting that I'm going to be protective. Probably overprotective. It's not about controlling you. It's about making sure you're safe enough to live your life however you want. Put that way, It seemed less like a cage and more like freedom. The freedom to move through the world without constantly looking over my shoulder, without triple-checking locks, without lying awake wondering if I could afford both rent and groceries. "Okay," I whispered. His entire body went still. "Okay?" "Yes." I met his eyes, letting him see my decision. "I'll stay. We can try this. Try being a real marriage." The expression that crossed his face was almost overwhelming, relief and triumph, and something that looked dangerously close to reverence. His hands tightened on my shoulders, then slid down my arms to catch my hands, threading our fingers together. "You won't regret this," he promised, his voice rough with emotion. "I swear to you." "Don't make promises you can't keep," I interrupted softly. "Just be honest with me. That's all I need." He stared at me for a long moment, and I watched something shift in his expression, the last wall coming down, the final pretense falling away. What remained was raw and real and slightly terrifying in its intensity. "I've wanted to do this since the moment I saw you," he murmured, and then his lips were on mine. The kiss was nothing like I'd expected. Not demanding or aggressive, but achingly gentle. Like I was something precious he was afraid to break. His hands cupped my face with devastating care, his thumbs stroking my cheekbones as his mouth moved against mine with slow, thorough precision. I'd kissed David hundreds of times, but it had never felt like this. Never felt like my entire body was catching fire, like every nerve ending was suddenly alive and singing. Never made me want to climb inside someone else's skin just to get closer. A small sound escaped my throat, need and surprise and surrender all mixed together. Dante's control seemed to fracture at the sound. His hands slid into my hair, angling my head to deepen the kiss, and I opened for him without hesitation. He tasted like whiskey and want, his tongue sliding against mine with wicked skill. One arm banded around my waist, pulling me flush against him, and I felt the evidence of his desire pressed against my stomach. The realization sent heat flooding through me, pooling low and insistent. My hands explored the expanse of his chest, tracing the definitions of muscle, the raised tissue of scars. Each imperfection was a story, a moment of survival, a testament to the dangerous world he inhabited. And somehow, impossibly, I wanted to know all those stories, wanted to trace every mark with my fingers and lips until I'd mapped his entire history. Emma. My name came out ragged against my lips. His forehead pressed against mine, both of us breathing hard. "If you want me to stop, tell me now, because in another minute, I won't be able to." I should have said yes, should have insisted on taking things slow. We'd just agreed to try being a real couple hours ago. This was too fast, too intense. But I'd spent 3 years being practical, being careful, protecting myself from hurt by never risking anything. And where had it gotten me? Alone in a cheap apartment, working a job that barely paid rent, jumping at shadows and second-guessing every decision. Dante was offering something different. Something that scared me precisely because it felt so overwhelmingly right. "Don't stop," I whispered against his mouth. "Please don't stop." The sound he made was pure male satisfaction. Then he was lifting me, my legs automatically wrapping around his waist as he carried me toward the bed. The world tilted as he laid me down on the silk sheets, his body covering mine with delicious weight. "You're sure?" he asked one more time, his hand sliding under my t-shirt, fingers splaying across my ribs. "Because once I have you, Emma, I'm never letting go." The possessiveness in those words should have been a warning. Instead, it felt like a promise, one I desperately wanted him to keep. "I'm sure," I breathed, and pulled him down into another kiss. Morning light filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, painting the bedroom in shades of gold and amber. I woke slowly, awareness returning in fragments. The unfamiliar weight of an arm across my waist, the warmth of another body pressed against my back, the delicious ache in muscles I'd forgotten I had. Dante. Memory flooded back in a rush that made my cheeks burn. Last night had been... There were no adequate words. Overwhelming. Intense. Perfect in ways I hadn't known existed. He'd been everywhere at once. Demanding and tender. possessive and worshipful, taking me apart with methodical precision only to piece me back together as something new, something his. "You're thinking too loud," his voice rumbled against my shoulder blade, rough with sleep. His arm tightened around my waist, pulling me more firmly against him. I can practically hear the wheels turning. I smiled despite myself. Maybe I'm just thinking about breakfast. Liar. His lips brushed the nape of my neck, sending shivers down my spine. You're panicking, wondering if last night was a mistake, trying to figure out how to gracefully extract yourself. The accuracy stung. I'm not. Emma. He shifted, turning me in his arms until I faced him. In the morning light, he was devastatingly beautiful, dark hair mussed from sleep and my fingers, stubble shadowing his jaw, those eyes watching me with unnerving perception. Don't run from this. From us. I'm not running, I protested, but couldn't quite meet his gaze. His finger caught my chin, forcing eye contact. You are. In your head, you're already halfway out the door, already convincing yourself this was just physical, that it doesn't change anything. Does it? The question came out smaller than intended. Change anything, I mean. We slept together, but that doesn't automatically make us mine. He finished, his voice dropping to that dangerous register that made my stomach flip. Yes, it does. You agreed last night before we touched. You said you'd stay, that we'd try being a real marriage, or did you think I'd let you take that back in the morning light? The possessiveness should have rankled. Instead, it sent warmth spreading through my chest. I didn't say I was taking it back. Then what's the problem? I struggled to articulate the tangle of emotions. It's just fast. Yesterday morning, I woke up in my apartment thinking about grocery shopping and whether I needed to do laundry. Now I'm here, in your bed, and everything's different. It feels like vertigo. Understanding softened his features. Change is supposed to feel disorienting. His thumb traced my lower lip, the gesture already becoming familiar. But Emma, this isn't as sudden as you think. We've been married 6 months. We've been orbiting each other, learning each other, even if you didn't realize it. Last night was just finally admitting what was already there. You've been learning me, I corrected. I didn't even know where you lived. Fair point. He shifted onto his back, pulling me with him until I lay sprawled across his chest. His hand traced lazy patterns on my spine, soothing and arousing in equal measure. So ask me. Whatever you want to know. Complete honesty, remember? I propped my chin on his chest, studying his face. The scars looked more prominent in daylight. The one through his eyebrow, another along his jaw, a small mark near his temple. How did you get this one? I traced the line on his jaw. Knife fight. I was 19, stupid, and thought I had something to prove to my father's enemies. His expression darkened slightly. I learned quickly that bravado without skill just gets you killed. Your father? Dead now. Heart attack 3 years ago, though the stress of running an empire probably contributed. He said it matter-of-factly, without sentiment. He built what I have now, the legitimate businesses, the less legitimate ones, the network of people who owe favors and those who owe fear, and you inherited all of it, yes. No apology in his tone. I was raised for this, Emma, trained from childhood to take over. There was never another option. I traced another scar, this one on his shoulder. Bullet? Attempted coup. Someone thought they could take my territory by removing me. His hand caught mine, stilling my exploration. They were wrong. Did you kill them? He met my eyes steadily. Yes. I should have been horrified. Should have pulled away. Seen him as a monster. Instead, I felt a strange sort of relief at his honesty. Do you do that often? Kill people? Define often. He seemed to consider his words carefully. I'm not a psychopath, Emma. I don't enjoy it. But in my world, weakness is death. If someone comes for me or mine, I end the threat permanently. It's survival, not sadism. And I'm yours now, I said slowly, understanding the implications, which means anyone who threatens me becomes my problem to solve. His hand tightened on mine. Yes. The weight of that settled over me. That's a lot of responsibility. It's a privilege. He said it with such conviction that I almost believed him. Protecting you isn't a burden, Emma. It's the first thing that's felt right in years. I laid my head back down on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. Strong. Steady. Real. What happens now? Do I move all my things here? Do we tell people we're actually together? Yes to the first question. As for the second, he paused. That's your choice. We can keep this private if you prefer, but I won't hide that you're my wife. Not anymore. People will talk. They'll wonder why we kept it secret. Let them wonder. His fingers combed through my tangled hair. Or we tell them the truth. That we married quickly and decided to take time getting to know each other properly before going public. It's not even really a lie. A knock at the door interrupted us. Dante's entire body tensed, going from relaxed to alert in an instant. Yes. Marcus, sir. You asked to be informed when... The voice paused delicately. When certain information became available. Dante's jaw tightened. Give me 10 minutes. Footsteps retreated. I lifted my head, studying his suddenly closed expression. What information? He seemed to debate how much to tell me, and I saw the moment he remembered his promise of honesty. Your ex-fiancé. I had someone look into his finances more thoroughly last night. Unease prickled down my spine. Why? Because anyone who hurt you deserves my attention. He sat up, taking me with him, his hands settling on my waist. Emma, David Morrison isn't just in debt. He's in serious trouble. He's been embezzling from his company, using client funds to maintain his lifestyle. The Hampton wedding, the expensive fiancé. It's all built on fraud. I stared at him, trying to process this. You found all this in one night? I have resources. He said it simply, like having the ability to uncover financial crimes overnight was normal. The question is, what do you want me to do about it? Do about it? I repeated, confused. He humiliated you, made you doubt yourself, and he's a criminal who's stealing from people who trusted him. Dante's eyes had gone cold, calculating. I could make it all disappear, the evidence, the investigation that's surely coming, or I could make sure it surfaces immediately, that he faces consequences. The power in those words was staggering. He was offering me revenge, wrapped in justice, delivered with clinical efficiency. Why would you make it disappear? If you asked me to. His hand came up to cup my face. If for some reason you still cared about him, wanted to protect him, I wouldn't like it. But I'd do it for you. The realization of how much control I suddenly had was dizzying. Dante, this powerful, dangerous man, was giving me the choice. Not because he had to, but because my wishes mattered to him more than his own instincts. I don't want you to protect him, I said quietly. But I don't want revenge either. I just want... I paused, searching for the right words. I want him to face natural consequences. Whatever was going to happen anyway, let it happen. Don't interfere to help or hurt him. Just let justice run its course. Something like approval warmed Dante's expression. You're better than me. I'm just tired of letting David Morrison take up space in my life. I leaned into his touch. He doesn't deserve your attention or mine. Let him deal with the mess he made himself. Dante studied me for a long moment, then nodded. All right. I'll tell Marcus to shelve the information. If the authorities find it on their own, fine. But we won't be the ones to point them in that direction. Relief washed through me. Thank you. Don't thank me for giving you what you want. He kissed me, quick and possessive. That's just what husbands do for their wives. The casual way he said it, husbands, wives, as if we were normal, made me smile despite myself. Is that what we are now? Normal married people? Nothing about us will ever be normal, he said with certainty. But yes, married. Really married. For however long you'll have me. You said forever last night. I meant it. He stood, pulling me up with him. Now, I need to deal with Marcus. Take your time getting ready. Business. I'll have breakfast brought up and then... He paused, looking almost uncertain for the first time. Then I'd like to show you something. Curiosity sparked. What? A surprise. Wear something comfortable. 2 hours later, I found myself in another SUV, this one heading out of Manhattan toward Brooklyn. I dressed in jeans and a soft sweater, my hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Dante sat beside me, one hand loosely holding mine. the other scrolling through messages on his phone. "Are you going to tell me where we're going?" I asked as we crossed the bridge. "Patience." But I caught the slight smile playing at his lips. We pulled up outside a building I recognized immediately. My old apartment building, the one I'd been evicted from 6 months ago. Confusion furrowed my brow. "Why are we here?" Dante didn't answer, just guided me out of the vehicle and toward the entrance. The security detail remained outside as we entered, taking the stairs to the 3rd floor, my old floor. He stopped in front of apartment 3C. My old apartment. "Dante, what?" He produced a key, unlocking the door and pushing it open. "Go ahead." I stepped inside and froze. The apartment had been transformed. Where before it had been barely furnished with second-hand pieces and peeling paint, now it gleamed. Fresh paint, new hardwood floors, updated fixtures. But more than that, my things were here. My paintings hung on the walls, properly framed and lit. My books filled new built-in shelves. Even my ridiculous collection of mismatched mugs sat in the kitchen cabinet, visible through the open doorway. "I don't understand," I whispered. Dante moved to stand beside me. "I bought the building 6 months ago, after we married. The eviction notice you received was not entirely legitimate." I turned to stare at him. "What?" "I needed a way to approach you with the marriage offer. Needed you desperate enough to consider it." He met my eyes steadily, not flinching from the confession. "So I created the situation, bought the building, had the owner send eviction notices to everyone, then offered you a solution." Anger sparked, hot and bright. "You manipulated me from the very beginning." "Yes." No excuses, no justifications. "I did, and I'd apologize, except it brought you into my life, and I can't regret that." "That's..." I struggled for words. "That's incredibly controlling, borderline psychotic." "Probably." He stepped closer, but didn't reach for me. "But Emma, I've spent the last 6 months having this apartment renovated, furnished with your things, your style. I was going to give it to you regardless, whether you stayed with me or not. After the 2 years, this was going to be yours, paid for, no strings attached." I looked around again, seeing the care in every detail. The reading nook by the window, positioned to catch afternoon light. The easel set up in the corner, with fresh canvases and professional-grade paints. The kitchen updated, but keeping the vintage tile I'd always loved. "Why?" I asked, voice breaking slightly. "Because even if you chose to leave me, I wanted you to have somewhere safe. Somewhere that was yours." His hand finally reached out, catching mine. "I manipulated the situation to bring you to me. I won't deny that or excuse it. But everything since, the protection, the care, the wanting you, that's real. And this apartment is my way of proving it. You have a choice, Emma. You always have a choice. Stay with me in the penthouse or take this place. Either way, you're secure." Tears pricked at my eyes. The manipulation should have been unforgivable. Was probably unforgivable by any normal standard. But this apartment, renovated with such attention to detail, given freely regardless of my decision, spoke to something deeper than manipulation. It spoke to genuine care. "You're insane," I said, but the words lacked heat. "Completely," he agreed. "Is that a deal breaker?" I thought about David, who had taken and taken without ever giving back, who had made me small to make himself feel big, who had left me with nothing and felt justified doing it. Then I looked at Dante, who had orchestrated our meeting through morally questionable means, but who had spent 6 months ensuring I'd land on my feet regardless of whether he got what he wanted, who defended me against casual cruelty, who wanted to keep me, protect me, worship me. His words, exactly as I was. "I should probably say yes," I admitted. "Normal people would say yes, but you're not normal people." He said it with such certainty, such acceptance. "You're the woman who cries over children's books and volunteers every Saturday and sees the good in people even when they don't deserve it. You're the woman who asked me to let your ex face natural consequences instead of crushing him. You're Emma." My Emma. The possessiveness in those words settled into my bones, feeling less like a cage and more like coming home. "I'm still angry about the manipulation," I said. "You should be. And I'm keeping this apartment as backup, just in case." Something flickered in his expression, hurt, maybe, or fear. But he nodded. Fair enough. But I'm staying with you. I stepped closer, placing my free hand on his chest. In the penthouse, as your wife. Really, your wife. The relief that washed over his features was profound. He pulled me against him, one hand tangling in my hair, the other banding around my waist. You won't regret this. I might, I said honestly, looking up at him. This is probably the craziest decision I've ever made. You're possessive and controlling, and you manipulated me into marriage. True. He didn't even try to deny it. But you're also honest, now, at least, and you see me. Really see me. Not who you want me to be, but who I actually am. I pressed closer, feeling his heartbeat against my chest. So yes, I choose this. I choose you. Obsession, overprotectiveness, and all. The kiss he gave me was different from the ones before, less about desire and more about sealing a promise. When he finally pulled back, his forehead rested against mine, and I could see the truth written in every line of his face. This man, dangerous, powerful, slightly unhinged, loved me, maybe not in the way normal people loved, but with a fierce, consuming intensity that both terrified and thrilled me. Thank you, he whispered. For what? For taking a chance on the monster. I reached up, tracing the scar along his jaw. You're not a monster. You're just a man who loves dangerously. I smiled slightly. Lucky for you, I'm apparently into that. His laugh was surprised, genuine. Lucky for me indeed. We stood there in my renovated apartment, wrapped in each other. As afternoon light painted everything gold, outside the city continued its endless rhythm. But in here, in this moment, we existed in our own universe, complicated, messy, and perfectly imperfect. 6 months ago, I'd married a stranger out of desperation. Today I was choosing him again, knowingly and completely, not because I had to, but because somewhere in the chaos of his obsession and my vulnerability, we'd found something real, something worth fighting for, something that felt impossibly, terrifyingly like love. Take me home, I said softly. The penthouse? Yes. I pressed a kiss to his jaw. Our home. The smile that lit his face was worth every risk, every fear, every moment of uncertainty. And as we left the apartment hand in hand, his security detail falling into formation around us, I realized something profound. I'd spent 3 years protecting myself from hurt by never letting anyone close. But maybe the bravest thing I could do wasn't protecting my heart. It was giving it away to someone who would guard it more fiercely than I ever could. Even if that someone was a mafia boss with an obsession problem and a tendency toward overprotectiveness, maybe especially then, 3 weeks later, I sat in the children's ward at the hospital, reading to Sophia's younger sister Maria. Dante's security detail waited outside, discreet but present. My paintings hung in the penthouse now, properly lit and admired. My clothes filled half of Dante's closet, our closet. And every night, I fell asleep in his arms, safe and cherished and exactly where I belonged. Maya had nearly fainted when I'd finally told her the truth, all of it. The arranged marriage, the obsession, the manipulation, the decision to make it real. She'd called me crazy, then hugged me tight and said she'd never seen me happier. She was right. David's arrest had made the news last week. Embezzlement, fraud, facing years in prison. Vanessa had left him immediately, and I'd felt nothing but mild pity when I'd seen his mugshot. He'd become irrelevant, a closed chapter in a story that had finally found its proper ending, or perhaps its proper beginning. Mrs. Moretti? Maria looked up from the book. You're smiling. Is the story happy? I glanced down at the page, the part where the velveteen rabbit becomes real through love. Yes, I said softly. Very happy. Because wasn't that what had happened to me? I'd been worn and ordinary, invisible to most of the world, and then someone had seen me, truly seen me, and loved me into being real. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was messy and complicated and occasionally frightening, but it was mine. We were real, Dante and I, imperfectly, dangerously, beautifully real. And I wouldn't trade it for anything.